Hello, and welcome to this T-Level Tactics video for the Business Context Unit of the T-Level Digital Support Services course. And this video, the topic is proposing change, which is essentially if we've identified where something might need to change in a business or organization, how we can go about getting that process started. So here's what we're going to look at. First of all, we're going to outline the steps to prepare and plan for change. Then we'll explain the factors in supporting operational changes, for finally creating a proposal for an organisational change. As always, these videos are not endorsed or sponsored by any education, institution or qualification awarding body, and T-Level Tactics videos should not be used as a replacement to any classroom learning you might be receiving. The discussion and practical activities in the classroom with your peers and your lecturer will help to expand your thinking and comprehension. These materials are instead best used as preparation material or revision to reinforce your learning. And if you're studying the T-Level Digital Business Services course, this content is good for you as well, but is more contextualized towards IT support roles. Okay, let's have a look. In the last video, we briefly mentioned 3 different models for change: Kotter's 8-step change model, the ADKAR model, and Lewin's change management model. Now, they're all different, but they have some core steps in common with each other. And we're going to take a look at those core steps and the fundamentals that all successful change plans have. Here are those core steps. First of all, we should identify where a change is required and what kind of change is required. Secondly, we should evaluate what technology might be required to implement in this change. Third, generate buy-in. We'll look at that in a bit more detail in a moment. Fourth, plan mitigations. And fifth, creating a rationale in order to highlight the benefits of that change. We're going to go through each of these 5 stages in turn to look in detail at what it's all about. So the first step, identifying change. This is essentially what aspect of the business or organization requires change, and why is its current form causing an issue? Is the change that we're proposing aligned with the business objectives? Perhaps they've changed recently, we might need to consider that. And if we do initiate this change, what's the goal of it? What's the outcome going to be? What are the benefits? What's the value we're creating? That second step, evaluating technology. What technology is required to make this change? Is it a software change? Hardware? Perhaps we're looking at introducing artificial intelligence, as that's becoming quite big. Perhaps we're moving part of our business towards cloud technologies. Or we could be implementing some new data analytics functionality. And it's thinking about, well, how will the technology we're choosing address the issues we're identifying? Is it appropriate for this change? Is it appropriate for our use and for our organization? The third step is generating buy-in, and this is essentially a people-focused stage. It's about meeting with teams and staff that this change will affect. It's looking at, how do they work? What systems do they use? How will this change affect those systems? And why is it going to be good for them? And if it's not going to be good, this is a stage where we might want to step back and reevaluate what we're doing. It's a stage where we can communicate the benefits of this change and asking for their support to implement it. We can take a look at staff and resources in the organization that are going to be required to implement the change, and also creating a brief roadmap of how long the change might take and what may be involved. Now, at this stage, this could just be a list of bullet points, but later on, it might become a more formal, comprehensive project plan. The fourth stage is all about planning mitigations, which is essentially anticipating what could go wrong and how we can work around any issues. It's also looking at things like the scale of the project. What is the scope of the changes required and how large of a change is it? It's looking at potential feature creep, where we start off implementing one change, and as we go, we could potentially want to add more and more changes to make it even better than before. But it's also about reining that in to make sure we're only implementing what we planned in order to make sure it's delivered on time and doesn't cause any downtime. Perhaps when we're implementing the change, some new technology could be announced, and all of a sudden we're worried that what we're doing might be immediately outdated. Well, how can we work around that? How can we plan for that eventuality? It's also looking at cybersecurity issues and maintaining data security and preventing data loss. Finally, well, what if those random things occur, things that you just couldn't possibly anticipate, even if you've ensured that everything is compatible on paper? Just general errors that come up. What's our plan? Have we got a fallback plan? Or are we going to go ahead and try and find a way to patch it and work around? That final stage is all about creating a rationale. Organizations are going to want a convincing argument to spend money on any change. So be prepared to create a brief or a presentation that supports your arguments. This is likely going to be presented to a department head or senior managers. So it's going to need to be something that is, well, distilled down to its essence, but provides enough information to be convincing. You're going to need to be clear about why the change is needed. How are the benefits of this change going to outweigh the costs? And how is the change going to improve productivity? Remember that word, value. How is it going to provide value to the organization? You could also look at if this kind of change has been implemented in other organizations. You can explain how it's benefited them. You could also highlight the consequences of not implementing change. What could be the risks of not keeping up to date with technology? What could be the risks of not doing this now instead of in 5 years' time? Okay, if you're a Patreon subscriber, then this is time to download the task sheet from the Patreon page and have a go at task 1 in there. It's a short task, and it's only going to take you about 10 minutes, I think. So pause the video here, have a go for 10 minutes on task 1, and then come back and move on to part 2. So once we've got an idea of what we want to do, how are we going to make our changes work? How do they integrate into the business and already existing systems? How are we going to make sure that the changes are effective? How are we going to show that the change supports the business and other processes? How are we going to integrate these changes with existing systems used by stakeholders? How are we going to support best practice to use these new tools and processes? And how are we going to fix any issues and prevent downtime? These are the kind of questions that we'll need to think about and address. So, part of this might be building a process map to identify what processes interact with your changes and what might need to be modified in order to become compatible. We could also communicate clearly to staff on what processes are going to change and how exactly they're going to change. It could be that a process is suddenly becoming automated and they no longer have to do something. Excellent, they'll love that. It might be that a system is changing in some way, or perhaps a new system is being brought in to replace an old one. There's going to be a little bit of training and upskilling there to use it. It could be the existing system is just getting some additional features. So what training and development is there going to be for staff? What training and development could we provide? And what time is needed for this training and development to be completed? We could also gather feedback from staff and people involved in the process to continue developing and improving that change and that new process, bringing us back to that ITIL concept of continual improvement. Changes are also going to need to be completely seamless with the systems used by other stakeholders. And some of those stakeholders could be customers, suppliers, third-party systems, and other applications used in the business, potentially cloud-based systems that we might be using. We need to think about what data might need to be transferred or migrated to new systems. And it's important that we develop a test plan to ensure that any changes we've made do not conflict with existing systems. Now, best practice is going to be things like providing documentation on new processes created and the changes that we've performed. Documentation ensures that systems are used correctly and consistently in the way that we expect. We could also provide some hands-on training workshops and one-to-one guidance to people once these changes have been implemented. It's also important we have some user guidelines and policies to outline the do's and don'ts of any new systems or changes as well. Potentially, this could be an organisation-wide policy that may need to be looked at and amended. We'll also need to further down the line provide some evidence of the benefits of this change. Monitoring the outcomes of this change and any key performance indicators that might let us know if something's working correctly. And of course, we'll need to monitor the change in order to make sure it's working and fix any issues that come up. So we'll need to identify and prioritize any issues that arise during the change implementation process. If they do, we can conduct something called a root cause analysis to try and understand the underlying reasons for these issues. And it's important to implement quick and iterative solutions to address any immediate issues that present themselves. This is a part of Agile methodology that you'll take a look at in the planning unit. Now, before we deploy any fixes and try to solve any of these issues, we don't want to cause any further issues or downtime, so it's very important that we test these fixes in a controlled environment. We'll also want to communicate transparently with stakeholders about any of these issues, how we're going to go about fixing them, and any timelines for problem resolution. And of course, this brings us back to the best practice element of the previous slide, documentation, making sure that we document any issues we've come across and how we've fixed them for any future reference. That brings us to task 2. If you're a Patreon member, head back to the task sheet now, have a look at task 2 on there, and it's going to take you about 20 minutes. So pause the video here, have a go for 20 minutes on task 2, come back, we'll move on to the final section. So, how do we create a proposal? How do we bring all of this together? Well, we're going to put everything we've learnt so far into practice. Take a look at the scenario on the next part of the video, and we're going to come up with a bit of a plan. Here's our scenario. ABC Marketing are a digital marketing company that create and manage social media pages for retail stores and shopping centres across the country. They've got a number of photographers who go out to take pictures of stores and products, and these photographers then email a selection of images to account managers at the head office. The account managers then use some of these images to create social media posts to promote the businesses. Now, while the current system is functional, these images have quite a large file size and are filling up email inboxes quickly. Now, you've identified that a shared cloud storage system of your choice that photographers could upload images to and account managers can access may resolve the current issues. You'll need to create a proposal, either a report or a presentation, convincing the managing director to approve a change to cloud storage systems. You're going to need to think about and address all of the points we've looked at in this video. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you are more than welcome to have a go at this. But if you're a Patreon member, there is a bit of a structure, template, and some prompts to help you out with your creating your proposal and things you should think about. It's going to take a bit longer for this. I think it's probably going to take somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour to come up with a comprehensive proposal. Remember, it is just a proposal at this stage. It's not a full project plan. That's something we're going to look at in a later video. So bear that in mind. Pause the video here, spend some time creating that proposal, and then we'll wrap things up by looking at what we've looked at so far in this video and a quick exam question. Okay, so in this video, we've outlined the steps to prepare and plan for change. We've explained the factors in supporting operational changes. And finally, we created a proposal for ABC Marketing to potentially make a change to a cloud storage system. So we should be ready to have a go at this exam question. discuss the importance of proactive planning in achieving and sustaining digital operational integrity through change. It's worth 6 marks. So this could be where you make 3 different points and then you discuss what's good and bad about those points in order to get those 6 marks. And that brings us to the end of the video. In the next video, we're going to be looking more about how to implement these changes, and we'll be gradually getting closer and closer towards building a proper project plan for a potential change in an organization. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you are at youtube.com/@TLevelTactics. And if you're not a Patreon member yet, well, go and have a look. All the task sheets are there, all of our previous content is there, and there are some extra benefits for Patreon members as well at patreon.com/TLevelTactics. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.